Special teams! What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R, where once again the Seattle Kraken hold their own against a very good team in the Carolina Hurricanes, but once again for the second night in a row come up short, losing this one 3-2. And I know not very many of you watched that R&R from the Caps game a night ago, which is fair enough. It was a loss and there is just another game right after it, but there were a lot of similar themes between these two games. One of which definitely being the fact that the special teams made the difference in both games. In that game in DC, it was a 2-goal difference that special teams made, with the Capitals going 2 for 2 on the power play and the Kraken going 0 for 3. And while the final score was a 3-goal difference, if you take away the empty netter at the end, then special teams were the difference in the game, with both teams scoring twice 5-on-5. And once again in this game, while there is a power play goal that the Kraken score in it, surprising everybody, the difference in the game once again was special teams, where both teams scored once 5-on-5, but the Kraken went just 1 for 3 on the power play, while the Hurricanes went 2 for 3. Which, I guess to be fair, isn't that big of a difference, especially considering the difference in how good these power play units have been for the two teams coming into this game, where the Hurricanes have 2 of the best special team units in the entire NHL. They have the very best penalty kill unit, and actually a historically good one, near 90% on the season. Meanwhile, their power play unit is just a measly 3rd best in the league. Meanwhile, the Kraken, well, they may not have the worst in either category, but they're very near the bottom in both. The Kraken power play is 4th worst in the league. You can probably guess who 2 of those teams that are worse than them are. And the 3rd one is the Flyers, who have also had plenty of issues this season as well. Meanwhile, the penalty kill unit is 5th worst in the league. Again, you can probably guess who 2 of those teams worse than the Kraken are. And then there's the Canucks, who have the worst penalty kill unit in the entire league, as well as the Red Wings, which is a little bit more of a surprise. The special teams making the difference in both losses was not the only frustrating similarity between these two games, though. The other being the lineup itself, where, yes, it is nice to see this team about as healthy as they've been all season, really healthier than they've been for the vast majority of it, but there is one player that was missing from both of these lineups that, honestly, I just can't explain why he's not in them. That being Ryan Donato, who last night against the Capitals, I really didn't make all that much of it, considering it is the first night of a back-to-back, and letting a guy sit here and there on a back-to-back is nothing terribly new. However, him being a healthy scratch in both games makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Now, I know there are a lot of people who have not been terribly happy with Hackstall's performance as the head coach of the Kraken here in this first season, and for the most part, I've been saying that with it being an expansion team, it's kind of hard to evaluate how much of this is on Hackstall and how much of it is just a team that's had issues really gelling in this first year together, with all of the interruptions with COVID and injuries and all sorts of different things that have made this a much more difficult first year for a team. However, one thing that you can do to help your team out is put the players on the ice that are more likely to put the puck in the back of the net. And as far as that's concerned, Donato has the 5th most goals on the team, one of just 5 players with more than 10 at this point in the season. And on top of that, he's one of the few players on this team who is actually willing to shoot the puck over passing it. Although, come to think of it, considering how this offense and especially the power play has played so far this season, maybe that's the problem. The fact that he's taking shots and not passing the puck, which is much more what they like to do, is just pass it around in circles until eventually the other team takes it away without them getting a shot off. Hackstall hasn't been asked directly about why Donato was missing from both of these lineups, a healthy scratch in both as far as we know. Maybe there is some sort of injury we don't know about and that's why he's been out, or illness of some kind, but not that they've reported. And when asked about the lineup, all he could say was, we're trying to put 12 guys out there who are ready to compete. Which, again, with Donato being one of the few players willing to shoot first on this team, I have a hard time understanding how he doesn't fit that description. And again, not to beat a dead horse, but he does have the 5th most goals for a team that has had issues scoring goals. So, yeah, really seems like a player you'd want to have in your lineup whenever he possibly can be. As far as who ends up out of the lineup to put Donato into it, to me, Sheahan would be the obvious answer there. I saw on the subreddit a lot of people going after Appleton, but I think Appleton offers a lot to this team that isn't necessarily obvious as far as putting up points is concerned. And yeah, over that losing streak that they had, he did have a bit of a rough stretch, but at this point, he's now part of the best line the Kraken have going at the moment, with that Gord and Blackwell as well as Appleton line that has been the best one the Kraken have had on the ice for the last 2 games. And well, surprisingly, it has been Blackwell of all people that's been driving most of the scoring over that stretch. Appleton has been doing his part as far as setting those plays up is concerned. If you had asked me this same question of who to take out a couple of weeks ago, I probably also would have brought up Wenberg, but he has been playing pretty well on that line with McCann. And I don't know that Donato fits terribly great on a line with McCann, considering McCann is another one of the few Kraken players who is willing to take shots when given the opportunity. So you probably do want to split those 2 guys up at the very least. Of course, from purely a scoring perspective, there's also Morgan Geekie, but especially with him being one of the younger players the Kraken have, I think there is value in keeping him out there just to continue to get NHL looks and hopefully get him to finally get things rolling a bit. He has recently had a few pretty good games where he absolutely could have been on the scoreboard a couple of times, but just has been kept off of it by good goaltending. So I'm not terribly upset by having Geekie in there as much as possible as well. Plus, at least as far as this game is concerned, with it being his return to his old home in Carolina, yeah, there's no way he wasn't going to end up in the lineup. He even ends up getting the opening faceoff for the Kraken, which is another reason to keep Geekie in a lineup where he's been, other than Järnkrok, the best face-off guy the Kraken have had. Unfortunately, he doesn't end up getting on the scoring sheet with a goal or an assist in this game in his return to Carolina. Largely, I would say, kind of being a non-factor in this game, though he does have at least a couple of shots on goal. That having been said, he wasn't the only Seattle Kraken member that was returning to their old home in Carolina. Not any other players necessarily, but this organization is full of Carolina Hurricane alumni, if you will. Of course, there is the GM in Ron Francis, who, as they pointed out a number of times during the broadcast, has his number and name hanging from the rafters in that building. The other one, though, being John Forslund, the Kraken TV play-by-play guy, who was not only Carolina's play-by-play guy for their entire existence up until this year, but was even the play-by-play guy for the old Hartford Whalers before they even moved to Carolina. So to say that he is a part of the fabric of that franchise would be putting it somewhat lightly. And that was definitely evident from the number of signs that we saw throughout the crowd in this game, saying, "We miss you, John," or giving reference to some of his more famous calls like, hey, what do you say? Welcome back, John Forslund, that kind of thing. I think I even saw a hack and whack sign. I'm not sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was one, considering that's another one of his go-to sayings. Inexplicably, though, the franchise didn't sign him to a new contract after his old one expired last season, and thanks in large part, I would think, to Ron Francis signing as the GM for Seattle, he ends up here, and selfishly, I'm glad that they didn't re-sign him because I've loved listening to him call games all season long for the Kraken. As we do finally get into the game, it starts out for really about the first half of the first period, a rather uneventful back and forth game with a couple of chances here and there at either end of the ice, but both goaltenders able to come up with the fairly easy saves. Leading into the first Kraken power play of the night, which, considering at the start of this video we talked about how the special teams have been going for this team lately, which is not good in case you missed that, you might not be terribly surprised to learn that this power play is nothing to write home about. Outside of Grubauer bailing out his own power play unit about halfway through it with a big save on Sebastian Aho, who got on a free breakaway shorthanded. Again, Grubauer able to come up with that save. To be fair, the power play does create one very high danger scoring chance right at the end of it when Geekie makes a nice pass across to Järnkrok waiting on the other side next to the goal. Järnkrok gets the shot off, but just isn't quite able to get it over the pad of Ranta, who does make a very nice toe save, getting back just in time to get his pad on it. The play in the back half of the first would also be pretty back and forth and would also end up scoreless, as the entire first period would end up scoreless by the first intermission, but it was much more high event, especially as far as scoring chances are concerned. And for Grubauer, he was not just good on that power play for the Kraken, he was spectacular really throughout the course of this entire game, but especially in the back half of this first period, where he makes a couple more pretty big saves for the Kraken. One where he makes a save using his mask, and another where a rebound leads to a wraparound chance, but Grubauer is able to dive back over his shoulder to the opposing post, putting both hands to it and getting his stick and glove to it just in time to make the save on the wraparound chance, and then get his glove to another rebound chance that the Canes were able to get, keeping it somehow out of the net. And eventually we would get to that first intermission with the score still knotted up at 0. But the game would not stay scoreless long into the second when the Kraken get a power play, and to the surprise of, I think, just about everybody watching it, within seconds the puck is in the back of the net. It's Yanni Gourde who takes a shot off on net, though considering this shot isn't a particularly hard one, I think he was just looking for a rebound off of Ranta's pad, and that's exactly what he gets. Järnkrok waiting for that rebound out in front of the net, gets a stick on it, takes a shot himself, but that one doesn't get past Ranta either. However, this rebound goes back to another Kraken stick. It's Wennberg waiting next to the net, and he is able to glance it right off the top of Ranta's pad and into the top of the net to give the Kraken the 1-0 lead. And wouldn't you know it, just like we talked about in that game against the Capitals, the Kraken scoring by taking a shot off on net and having a couple of guys near the net to get rebounds. Yep. Turns out, taking shots and having net front presence does lead to goals. A Kraken power play who, regardless of who the penalty kill team has been, has had a hard enough time getting out of their own way, versus a penalty kill unit who late in the season is looking to go 90% on the kill for the first time in a very long time, and maybe even ever in the NHL. And of course, just seconds into their second power play, the Kraken managed to score. I guess we can just hope that this is a sign of things to come for the Kraken. But I wouldn't hold your breath. And shortly after this Kraken power play goal, the penalty kill unit is going to get their chance to make an impact on the game, which they do end up doing. Unfortunately, it's not the impact that Kraken fans would have liked to see. To be fair, it is a pretty good penalty kill for a large chunk of the time. Unfortunately, in the waning seconds of the Carolina power play, Seth Jarvis takes a shot off on net, which Grubauer makes the save on, but he can't find the rebound. Kakiniemi does find it, gets it across to Niederreiter, who puts it into the net before Grubauer can pick up where the puck is. And just like that, it's 1-1, and both teams have a power play goal in this one. The Canes, though, doing it on their first attempt, while the Kraken, it took 2. Just a minute later, though, Pesci fans on a dump-in attempt, turning it over to Larson at the Kraken blue line, who quickly gets it across center ice through the neutral zone to Järnkrok, who's waiting on the Carolina blue line. He's on a free breakaway and snipes it top corner to give the Kraken the quick response goal. And just over a minute after Carolina tied things up on the power play, the Kraken respond right back with a goal to take the lead back. It's 2-1 with the Järnkrok goal. Your boy Callie, who has been hot lately, once again coming up big for the Kraken. Seattle does get another push right into the Carolina end off the faceoff, trying to make it 3-1, but just can't get anything more past Ranta, who, just like Grubauer, had a very good night in goal for the Canes. And then from kind of about the halfway point of the second period on, the entire second half of this game, the rest of it is largely controlled by Carolina. Maybe that's something to do with Seattle being on the second half of a back-to-back and some fatigue potentially setting in there. Either way, Carolina pushes right into the Kraken end after the Kraken push comes up short, and they get a very good chance to quickly tie things up as Dunn takes a shot, I think, off of the inside of his knee somewhere where there wasn't padding. Either way, he goes to the ice after blocking a puck in front of the net and is slow to get up and kind of just hobbling around for about a minute, maybe even 2, before the Kraken can get the puck cleared and get that change. Dunn really looking worse for wear that entire time. Fortunately, he would end up being okay later on in the game, though early in the third he would end up taking another shot off of his leg, and that would take him a second to recover from as well. Yeah, a rough night for him as far as blocking pucks with the wrong part of your legs. But while this effectively 4.5v5 push by the Hurricanes doesn't lead to a goal for them, it does lead to a second Hurricanes power play. And 4 seconds into that power play, the puck is in the back of the net. Now, with it being a 4-second power play goal for the Canes, you probably would be thinking that Grubauer just let the first shot in. However, that's not exactly what happens. The Canes do win the faceoff pretty clean and get it right out to Teravainen, who takes that first shot off, but Grubauer makes the save. Then the rebound is out to Trocheck, who takes a shot himself. Grubauer comes up with that save as well. However, the second rebound, once again, back out to Teravainen, and his second shot does score to give the Canes that second goal and tie things up at 2. And for the Seattle penalty kill, Honestly, I'm not even sure a single one of them touched this puck other than Grubauer, who makes 2 saves before eventually the third one finds the back of the net. And when you're playing 5v1 as Grubauer seemed to be here, yeah, that's probably going to eventually happen. And so here we are now at this point in the game, where the Canes are 2 for 2 on the power play and the Kraken are 1 for 2. But more importantly, since the Capitals were 2 for 2 on their power play the night before, that means that the Kraken are now 0 for 4 on the power play in their last 4 attempts. I guess this is what I get for saying the Kraken should just go to the penalty kill more instead of the power play after getting that shorthanded goal against Nashville, which was their 3rd one in a short span. Instead, their penalty kill has just completely fallen apart, though they do end up getting a successful kill later in this game. The third period does start with the game still tied at 2, and over the course of this period, both teams will get one more power play attempt. Surprisingly, based on how this game has gone so far, both end up coming up short. However, at 5-on-5, that's where the difference was made in this period, and for once, it's not the Kraken getting the better of it, who really have been the better 5-on-5 team over the course of all 3 of their last 3 games, up until about this third period, or really the back half of this game as we mentioned earlier. Kraken get the first power play of the period around the halfway point of the period, and this power play is, well, nothing new from a Kraken power play perspective. It really doesn't go much of anywhere, and I don't even know if they got more than 1 shot off on goal. But to be fair, I can give them a bit of a break considering they did score at least once against, again, the best penalty kill unit the NHL has to offer. However, right after that Kraken power play comes to an end, they aren't able to maintain momentum. Carolina gets it right back into the Kraken end, and a shot deflected in front is saved by Grubauer, but Necas picks up the rebound, whips around 180, and flings it into the side of the net. To give the Canes their first lead of the game, it's now 3-2, and for Grubauer, it's a 3rd goal this game that comes after a rebound, with a couple of his other ones coming after 2 rebounds. Once again, with the team having the better of the net front presence, getting the difference maker here, with the only goal in this game either way that ends up going in clean without a rebound is the Järnkrok goal on that breakaway back in the second. From there, Seattle does get a few chances to try to even things up late. Dunn, who finally does get back to looking somewhat normal, gets a pretty good scoring chance of his own near the face-off circle in the Carolina end, but nothing's getting past Raanta, and the Carolina defense at this point is dialed in protecting that 1-goal lead. Eventually, after Carolina has a 3rd power play, which for the first time in a while, Seattle's able to kill off, Grubauer does end up getting pulled to have the net go empty. Carolina never ends up finding it, but the Kraken don't find the back of the Carolina net either, and this game does end up finishing 3-2 in favor of the Canes in regulation. And so in the end with this game, just like we talked about in the beginning, it ends up having a very similar feel to that game against the Caps, even if the score looks noticeably different, or at least the opposing score anyway. It is a game where the Kraken really held their own and played very well against a very good team, especially in the Canes being one of the NHL's 3 best teams at this point in the season. So, you know, it's a game that you can't feel all that bad about if it wasn't for how this season has gone in general, and the fact that once again you lose the game on special teams and not 5-on-5. And also with the added frustration that, at least as far as I'm concerned, the Kraken, for a second night in a row, didn't ice the best team that they could have, even though they are about as healthy as they've been this entire season. Again, though, there is also a similar feeling to last night in the fact that while this loss, like any loss is frustrating in the short term, in the long term, honestly, it might be better for the team, as the 2 teams behind them in the standings are slowly starting to catch up. So the Kraken actually have a pretty decent chance of finishing in that potentially even bottom spot and having a very good chance of getting Shane Wright, who, by all indications, could end up being a franchise-changing type of player wherever he ends up going. And as far as Seattle's concerned, even with Matty Beniers still yet to play for them, that could definitely be the type of player that the Kraken need to get a little bit more finishing power when it comes to scoring goals, where, again, they've been able to outpossess teams more often than not, and even lately outshoot teams, which has been a pleasant surprise, just not able to get enough pucks into the back of the net past that red line. Either way, the Kraken will have another chance against another very good team in the Toronto Maple Leafs on Tuesday, a game which I will be doing a watch-along stream for, so feel free to join for that one. A Maple Leafs team who, unlike these last 2 teams, the Kraken did not fare terribly well against the first time when they played them at home, so maybe they can change that up here on the road. Until then, though, feel free to let me know what you thought of this game or both of these games if you didn't watch the previous video down in the comments section. And if you have made it to this point, thank you very much for watching. If you did like or enjoy this video, there are buttons for that kind of stuff down below that help support the channel, so I'd appreciate you using them. And until next time, stay safe out there, be good to each other, feel free to join us for the stream, and go Kraken.